Alright, a few days ago, Little Mushroom Guy asked me for a primer on my Manaless Dredge deck. I assume he was looking at my Moxfield deck suite, my collection of decks that I've got posted there, and saw the list and thought, how the fuck does that work? What a pile of crap. Can you explain it? Alright, Little Mushroom Guy, I'm here to explain it for you. It's a fun deck. It's hard to play, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense the first time you play it, but it grows on you like a fungus. So key cards. First key card is Bizarre Baghdad. You need a Bizarre Baghdad in your opening hand. You have to get one of these suckers down and running as quickly as possible. In fact, this deck, as far as I know, as far as I can see, is the only reason this card is worth as much as it is. If it weren't for Dredge, this card would still, it'd probably be about maybe 150, 200 US dollars. Because it's interesting. It's an interesting Arabian Nights card. But the only deck I know that plays it is Dredge. Maybe some Commander guys that have been around for a while, they play it. But pretty much Dredge. What does it do? So it's a land. It's the only land in the deck. Tap to take 2 cards from the library. So tap, draw 2 cards, discard 3 cards. I mean, all the extra verbiage is just the way they did it. Because they were still experimenting with the game. I mean, it wasn't even a year old when Bizarre Baghdad was printed. So it says tap, draw 2 cards, discard 3 cards. Kind of a reverse Faithful Saluting with more cards. Anyway, this is key. To get it, to make sure you have one in your opening hand, this deck runs 4 Serum Powders. I don't know of any other deck that runs Serum Powder. None. I have no idea. If there is a deck that runs Serum Powder, and some of you know, first, lick and subscribe. Once you have licked and subscribed to my channel, then please, if you know, tell me if another deck plays Serum Powder. So anytime you can mulligan, and it's in your hand, you can exile your hand from the game to draw that many cards. Which I don't like doing. I don't like exiling cards from my hand in a mass, uncontrolled manner. Because there might be something I really want to play. I put cards I like to play in my decks. So, the other reason that you do this is because Bizarre Baghdad, you want a full hand. You don't want to be down, mulliganing down to 4 or 5, because then you're not going to dump as many things in your graveyard. So you need a full hand and a Bizarre to start with. So, you mulligan. Exile your hand, and then including the Serum Powder, and then draw the many cards, so you get 7 new ones. So you start fresh, and you should get a Serum Powder or Bizarre at that point. Next key is Bridge from Below. Whenever a non-token creature is put in your graveyard from play, if this is in your graveyard, you get a 2/2 black zombie. If an opponent has a creature die, if this is in your graveyard, it gets exiled. So it's weird. And if you don't play Dredge very often, or you're just seeing it for the first time, you're thinking, okay, why the hell would I do this? Why would I play this? What kind of crap are you pushing on me here? Trust me, it took me a while to get used to this card, and it also took me a while to remember my triggers, because I don't play this in any other deck. There's no reason to. No reason at all. Okay, that's not true. There probably is a reason. I just don't have a reason, but I'm sure somebody does. I'm sure somebody's playing that in a Commander deck somewhere. Alright, let's look at some other key cards in the deck. So I've talked about Serum Powder, Cabal Therapy. So you have creatures you can get into play for free, and sometimes you need to sacrifice them. Sometimes you need them to die in order to trigger different effects. So you can flash. You're not going to pay for anything. First off, ignore the mana costs as far as the way you play Magic. They don't matter. This is Manaless Dredge. The only lands, the only way of producing mana, well, there are no ways of producing. The only lands are those 4 Bizarre Baghdads, which are key. It should be called Manaless Bizarre because it's so important. So you can flash this back to force somebody to show you their hand and discard all cards that you name by sacrificing a creature. Okay, Noxious Revival. Maybe the deck is playing this now, I don't know. I just put this in because people kept killing my Bazaars of Baghdad, and I didn't like it. So I wanted a way to get it back. So if I have 3 Bazaars in my graveyard already, somebody kills my 4th one, I'm like, oh, bruh. Oh, you son of a bitch. So this will get it back by paying 2 life. Dread Return. Okay, let's talk about that in just a minute. Okay, Hollow One. So if you Bazaar Baghdad, you activate it during your turn, and you discard 3 cards, he is free. He costs 2 less to cast for each card you cycled or discarded this turn. So if you draw 2, discard 3, and this guy is in your hand, you can just play him for free and then start going to town. Shambling Shell. He's only here for the dredge, and because he's black and green. That's it. Hogak, Arisen Necropolis. Oh, this bastard's big and beefy. He got banned in Modern. He was so good for Modern, they banned his ass. So he's a 7 mana 8/8, but he doesn't cost 7, not really. Because you can't spend mana to cast this spell. You have to tap your creatures and delve. So, with this deck, you delve for the 5, and then you convoke for the black or the green. That's where the zombies can come in. You get an 8/8 trampler for your trouble. So he's pretty big and beefy. Okay, we're not talking about that right now. We talked about him. Force of Will, I don't think I need to talk about this. Sometimes you have to play a tricky game. Sometimes you can't just run your cards out there and see what happens. Sometimes you need to keep Force of Will in your hand and a blue card in order to stop a key play or to stop somebody from interfering with your plans too much. For example, if you've got 4 bridges from below in your graveyard and they're going to bolt their Snapcaster Mage, you don't want to let them do it. No, 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 no. Don't let them do that shit. The problem is because you're dumping your hand and you're dredging instead of drawing, past your initial hand, it's not likely you're going to have a Force of Will. Because you don't want to draw cards, you want to dredge. But if you don't draw cards, you don't get a Force of Will. So it's a conundrum. We talked about that. Mental misstep. So this checks and sees and the coast is clear. So you pay 2 life. Oh, sorry. This counters a spell. So this encounter that lightning bolt. I was thinking of Gitaxian Probe, which is coming up real soon. So mental misstep. Restricted in Vintage. Banned in Modern. I think it's... No, yeah. I think it's banned in Legacy. So it's banned in Modern. I think it's banned in Legacy. And it's restricted in Vintage. You can only have 1 of these in Vintage. And it's a fucking degenerate format. Which shows you, should tell you kind of how powerful this card is. Icrid, another key card. So if he's in your graveyard, beginning of your, and remember, once you pass your upkeep, if you say, oh, I forgot my Icrid trigger, can I get it back? If your opponent is making you play tight, he's going to say, no, you missed it, too late. Draw your card, and then you don't get Icrid back. But you want to get Icrid back. You want to get Icrid back. Let's say you've got 2 Icarids and Hogak in the graveyard. So you can put those Icarids into play with haste. You can tap them. Black, black for Hogak, and then delve 5, and you've got an 8/8 trampler, and that usually is that's a heavy problem. And people have a problem, difficulty dealing with 8/8 trampler. And then at the end of turn, you sacrifice Icarid, and if you have bridge from below, you get some zombies because a creature went to the graveyard on your turn, and on your side. So at the beginning of your upkeep, again, if Icarid is in your graveyard, you may exile a black creature in your graveyard other than Icarid from the game. Then you get him back into play. But remember, only during your upkeep. Gitaxian Probe. This checks and sees that the coast is clear. So you pay 2 life, you look at your opponent's hand, and if they don't have any counters and can't really stop you, you say, alright, now you die! And it says, they do have a counter, they have a way of stop you. You say, I need to play around that shit. How do I get that out of your hand with some stuff I don't really care about, but you will? And then you have to figure it out. That's what Vintage is all about. Those little mind fuck games. Alright, Golgari Grave Troll. Dredge 6. Yep, he's in here to dredge 6. I like that he's a skeleton troll. The new one, I think it's Eternal Masters, he's a troll skeleton. I don't know why they reversed it, so you have a troll skeleton, but they did. So one is a skeleton troll, the other is a troll skeleton. Anyway, he dredges for 6. Don't worry about the other stuff, it doesn't matter in this deck. Prized Amalgam. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it enters from your graveyard, or you cast it from your graveyard, return Prized Amalgam from graveyard to battlefield at the beginning of the... So anyway, I just want to kind of hurry up and read through this. So this, remember the Ichrid. So during your upkeep, if you exile something shitty, like that guy, you exile his dumbass, because you don't care about him. He only has Dredge 3, so fuck him. You exile him, you get the Ichrid back. If any of these bastards are in your graveyard, at the end of the turn, they will come back into play tapped. So this is another way of getting more power on board, having things to attack with, having things to sacrifice to dread return to get the big beef. Let's put that there. Let's put that there. Serum Powder, I already explained it. Ichrid, I've explained it. Dread Return, we're waiting to explain it. This guy, he's only in there to be eaten by Ichrids, and Dredge 3 if you've got nothing else that dredges for a higher number. But also, keep in mind, Bazaar Baghdad says draw 2 cards. There's 2 instances of draw. If you have a Shambling Shell and a Golgari Grave Troll in your graveyard, you can replace one draw effect with Grave Troll's Dredge 6, replace the next draw effect with Shambling Shell's Dredge 3. So you don't draw 2 cards, you still have to discard 3 cards, so you can kind of see how hard it is to keep a Force of Will in this deck. To keep a Force of Will in your hand. It's not easy. Not if you're going full in on the game plan. Cabal Therapy, we talked about that. So you just flash it back by sacrificing creature. This guy. So if you dredge and you hit a Narcomoeba, I'm sorry, this is a signed version, so it's kind of hard to read. When he goes into your graveyard from your library, you may put him in play. So if you dredge 6 and you hit a Narcomoeba, it just comes into play on your side. As long as you remember, because it's a May ability. You don't have to do it, and if you forget and you go to the next step, your opponent's going to say, guess you don't get it. Force of Will. Counterspell. Noxious Revival. Yep, I have to get that Bazaar Baghdad back somehow after fucking Jund Wastelands it for the 2nd time, 3rd time. Stupid Jund with Ren and 6. Of course, I built the deck, so stupid me with Wasteland and Ren and 6. And then Narcomoeba. Ichrid talked about this is going to Stinkweed Imp. He's here to be eaten by Ichrid and to dredge 5. Already explained him. We explained him. Golgari Thug. He's in here to be eaten by Ichrid and dredge 4. Yep. Hop, 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 hop. Alright, now we're getting into the big beef. Let's just go to the big beef because all this other stuff is the same. It's just, I'm showing you the same shit. So we talked about Hogak, yeah? So Hogak is in there as a big beefy threat. The deck has 4 big beefy threats. Now, let's say you get 2 Ichrids and a Narcomoeba out. You can flashback Dread Return. Flashback by sacrificing 3 creatures. So you sacrifice after you attack. You probably attack with Ichrid, see what happens. If they're going to die, you don't want to do it because it's more important that you Dread Return them, sack them to get big beef. You want beef. So, flashback, sacrifice 3 creatures to get Elish Norn. She's a beautiful Phyrexian Praetor that has vigilance. She buffs your team. She screws your opponent's team. She has 4/7. I should have practiced that. I'm working off the cuff here. Hey, relax. You're not paying for this. So Elish Norn, Dread Return her if your opponent has a token strategy. if they have a bunch of small creatures and you need to kind of clear them out, or your token strategy is working and you have a bunch of 2/2 zombies. So you can smash and get the game over with. Dredge can be surprisingly fast. I was shocked at how fast Dredge can go sometimes. Flair the Hatebound. This used to be played in Dredge. I'm still playing an older version. I've seen where this has come out even 3 or 4 years ago. I didn't see any more lists with Flair the Hatebound, but I have a foil one and I like him. So this son of a bitch, when he comes into play, or another creature enters the battlefield from your graveyard, it deals damage equal to its power target creature player. So he comes into play, you dread return him. Your opponent gets hit for 4. If they kill him, then they get hit for another 5. Because he is undying. And then, if he goes to the graveyard and Bridge from Below is in play, not only does he come back bigger and do direct damage, but all the zombies for each instance of Bridge from Below, they come back and they deal damage too. And if Elesh Norn is in play, the game's pretty much over. So there's those. So he's here to deal with a problem. So if your opponent has some bullshit that you just can't deal with, you're just, oh God, what do I do about that? And it's not, of course, if it's something like Containment Priest, if a creature comes into play and wasn't cast, exile instead, that you're kind of screwed. You've got nothing for that. That just wrecks your game plan. Fortunately, my vintage decks aren't playing Containment Priest, because I want to give all of my decks a fair chance against each other. I don't want any one of my decks to have anything that just says this other deck loses. It cannot win. I don't want that. So, but this guy, let's see, in Jund, Wasteland, so you might want to exile Wasteland with this guy, so you have to dread return him, so you have to have 3 creatures to get him back out of the graveyard, and then you can exile the Wasteland, and then if he dies, you can exile something else. Against Arc Sprite, blue-red Arc Sprite, this can get rid of Blank-Steel Colossus, because that's a big problem. And against True Stone, my Stoneforge Mystic Swords deck with Monastery Mentor, probably the biggest threat Dredge faces in that deck is, I guess Batterskull, because if they start gaining life, then you start having problems. But anyway, that's the deck. That's what it does. Well, that's not what it does. That's the key pieces, but it still doesn't tell you how it works. So let me do that.